Hello, hello. It is 6:13 p.m. on Wednesday, September 27th, 2017, and you were listening to episode 45 of the all-new, all-remixed, all much better sounding, probably.
There we go.
Oh No Anime, the podcast. Hello, everybody. My name is Mark.
I'm Patrick.
And we are so happy to be back, so happy to have you again. Of course, with our awesome podcast schedule, we kind of don't do any.
I was about to say, what schedule?
But we have a couple in the pipeline that are going to be coming at you in the next couple of weeks.
Even if we haven't had a lot of regular numbered episodes lately. If y'all have been on the YouTubes, you've seen. Well,
we're going to let you in on a little secret. We want to get to that big old 5-0 real quick because
that happened.
It's coming up. We're 5 away from it now, essentially. But yeah, if you only know us by the podcast, I would highly suggest that you go over to our YouTube page, youtube.com/onoanime. That's where the majority of our content lives right now. Yeah, capital C content. And yeah, we like making videos a lot. I like doing the podcast a lot too, but it takes a lot more work, weirdly enough.
Yeah, you would think the videos would be a lot more difficult.
Yeah, you guys, I mean, go to our Twitter if you want to see what our current setup looks like. It's like I said to Patrick before we started this, I feel like I'm about to fucking fly the space shuttle because this shit is just getting so involved.
It's a lot.
But, that's what we do to bring you guys something that sounds and looks good. So, this is going to kind of be all over the place today, I feel like, because there's some stuff going on. I know we don't really talk about news anymore, but there's some really important stuff happening in anime. A bunch of stuff happened
within like the last few weeks, really.
So we'll get to that. I mean, I think if you're listening to this like right as it came out, you probably know what we're going to talk about, but I'm not going to spoil that. So before we do anything else, we kind of had an idea. I had an idea, and I told Patrick, and Patrick liked the idea of, we don't talk about like older anime or like not necessarily like super current or like anything other than super current anime on this podcast, and I kind of wanted to change that. So Patrick has my anime list up right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why he does is from this episode forward, barring crazy circumstances, we are going to look at holy shit.
Oh,
all
that's
right.
Good.
Okay, I know. We're gonna look at the my anime list top anime.
Oh, yeah, they have a ranking.
Yeah, they have a ranking. It's the most popular anime on their site, numbered based on, I think,
it's some metric between like the average score and how many people have watched.
So we're going to look at that list, and we're going to take the episode number, and we are going to match it with whatever anime is currently at that spot.
But before we go through, although this is a really good one, so the list that I have up right now, where we're just going to make a decision on the fly here, is ranked by rating. There's also the popularity rating, where this one is number 1. Do we want to do it by popularity instead?
That's a good question. I hadn't considered that.
Neither
we're pulling back the curtain here a little bit. I had always been doing it by rating. Actually, no, I had always been doing it by popularity.
Yeah, this is rating.
So
Let me find the popularity one.
I'd say we do it by popularity because I feel like that would probably...
That would give us more interesting things, for sure.
For sure. So...
where do I find that, though?
Can you not
keep talking. I'll find it.
Yeah, so... basically that's what we're going to do at the start of every episode. We're going to just kind of out of nowhere start talking about whatever the most popular anime of the corresponding episode number is that week. Now you might be asking yourselves, or you might be saying to me through the internet, hey Mark, that list shifts like every 5 seconds. And you're right, it does. And when we inevitably come to an anime that has moved down and we, get to that point where we have another anime, then...
I'm not sure if I like this idea anymore.
This is so good. Okay, guys. So, yeah, I mean, if we ever get to a point, which we will pretty soon, where we're going to have the same anime, again, then we'll switch list. We'll figure something out. So, oh boy, this is so good.
No, this is the worst.
No, this is very good. So, looking at this list right now,
Well, let me tell you what happened first. So I looked at the rating list, and I saw 45 was Death Note. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. And then I saw at the top is actually ranked number 1 by popularity. So I said, let me look at the popularity list.
Yeah.
And guess what is number 45?
Number 45 is the one and only, one of the most popular anime series of all time, which is why I'm so surprised that it's all down at number 5, Neon Genesis Evangelion.
I don't like next episode's choice either.
This is actually the best possible one that we could have had to start off, because it means we'll never have to talk about it again.
Good. I
like
never
in
want to
any
talk about it in the
context,
first
we
place.
can just knock it all out. So yeah, Neon Genesis Evangelion. So Patrick, tell me about the first time that you saw Neon Genesis Evangelion. Where was it? How old were you?
Jeez.
What period of your life were you going through?
You know, I couldn't even tell you the first time I had a run-in with it, but the first time I watched all of it was 7th grade.
Yeah.
Firmly in the middle of middle school. Obviously, a lot of it was lost on me, but I understood, because this is when I first started, like, super getting into anime and researching and figuring out what to watch. You know, This is the first thing that comes up. You know, you look on the friggin' GeoCities and Angel Fire pages. This was very popular on the Anime Web Turnpike.
Not an anime more represented on that website, on those websites than Eva.
Exactly. It affected me pretty greatly. I mean, it really, it was the first mecha I watched, to be honest, outside of, being
crazy.
in, I mean, the first one that I sat down and said, I'm going to watch this whole thing. Though it's not technically mecha. That's for a much longer episode than this.
It's a mecha series.
But,
by the bare definition.
Yeah, it kind of, just like it did for the industry, really, it introduced me to the idea that there could be, like, much deeper literary themes in anime.
Yeah, I remember seeing it once when I was much younger, and was basically getting all my anime just through kind of brushing up against it via Adult Swim's like late night anime block in like probably I'd say the mid 2000s probably is when I saw it, maybe even earlier than that, because I know they've shown the TV series in its entirety before, and I remember it was a fairly big deal when they first did it. I remember laying on my grandma's floor in her house in Clearwater and watching it on her massive rear projection, like old-fashioned big screen TV with like the weird like plastic screen that would rattle. Dude. It was definitely at that time the pinnacle of the Eva viewing experience. And again, much like you, when I first saw it, I didn't really understand what I was seeing. Like, I had heard about it from you, just very tangentially. I'd heard the name before, and of course I was pronouncing it Neon Genesis Evangelion, which I actually think would be the correct pronunciation of that word, but it's not a word. But yeah, I saw it and was kind of, and I it's so weird that I can remember as specifically as I can. It was Operation Yashima, which was the best episode that I could possibly see.
That's the best introduction as a kid.
Yeah, I was blown away by it. I didn't know what I was seeing. I didn't know any of the characters, but just that. I mean, Operation Yashima is one of the most iconic anime arcs of all time. It's one of my favorite, and
one of the things that after the tsunami, Japan named a real thing.
They did a real power conservation effort called Operation Yashima, which, I mean, what else would you name it? That's perfect.
That was the only choice.
So yeah, I mean, it is, you know, I know we both like to talk a lot of shit about it, but I think it's because we've both had such a long,
it's tumultuous.
To avoid. Yeah, it's a long tumultuous
I think
relationship.
you're a little keener on it than I am, but
yeah, I mean,
it's important and it's a good show. I just don't like talking about it that much because it's been done to death.
Yeah, I like its aesthetic. I am a huge fan of its design. I don't think anybody has really done more interesting mecha design maybe ever than Evangelion has, just in the terms of like completely reshaping what you think about as a mecha, like introducing this weird organic type of stuff into it that I don't think really, I'm sure it had been done before, but in that way it definitely hadn't. And Anno really just has such an amazing eye for directing really involved like warm-up sequences and mechanical sequences and really intricate shit that I really like. It's why I like Ghost in the Shell so much. It's why I like Akira so much. Is like there's just that really cool,
have a similar aesthetic,
chunky kind of feel to that entire show. And I think that to me, honestly was what appealed to me more than, the whole stuff of like, literary themes and all that, because obviously that came later and I understood why that was such a big deal. But to me, my initial appeal and what has always stuck out to me is just that show and everything that came after it is just so fucking well made. I mean, that was the other thing. That was like the other side of it when it came out. It was like everybody was like, "Fucking what? Like weekly anime can look like this. It can have this quality." Like, so and it's easy to forget that's a Gainax show. Like, it's so weird because you don't in our generation, I don't think very many people actively associate Evangelion as like the first thing they think of.
No, we think of the crazy shit.
Yeah, so it's really weird to think about that Eva is and technically was, but still is a Gainax thing. So
we're talking about the TV show. It says right here, TV 26 episodes. That is very much Gainax.
Yeah, the TV show for sure.
Pretty incredible stuff. I hate that it started there, and I'm also boycotting episode 46. We're skipping it.
Oh my god, yeah, I'm hoping the list changes by the time we get to that. Check back in at 46. That'll be fun. But
see you guys in a year.
Yeah. So I mean, I think at the end of the day, we talk a lot of shit about it because it's fun to do and it's been done to death, and it is literally like it is stereotypically like for us the anime. Like, it's like what can be possibly said about Eva that hasn't already been said in some other form.
Not until we get 4.0.
Yeah. So, and I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to the podcast episode dedicated to trying to figure out what it all means.
I'll have to see the movie 10 times first, like I did with the third one, to decide whether or not I liked it.
It almost feels like a burden to everyone at this point. Like it's this thing that is hung. It is the Half-Life 3 of the anime industry. It is hung over everyone's heads for so long. It's very clear that a lot of people, Anno being number one on that list, really just don't want to make that thing anymore and just want it to be done.
Hoping we forget about it.
And I'm sure that 4.0 will just be a swirling miasma of completely unintelligible shit because of it. But
how many does that come out before or after Uru and Blue?
God, how many directors has Uru and Blue had attached to it? Like 70?
All of them. It's every director.
We could put up a Twitter poll after this of which will come out first: Gunbuster 3, Uru and Blue, or Eva 4.0. 1.0 plus 3.0.
Yeah. God,
so,
what a dick.
Yeah, I don't know. It's we love it, but we also hate it like any good Eva fan.
Yeah.
Anyone that has grown up with that show has learned to hate it as much as they love it. And it's just it's the strangest relationship I have with probably any property other than now probably Halo. Now that Halo 5 has come out, I also probably hate that series as much as I love it.
That's for Oh No Video Games.
Yes, Oh No Video Games, our other podcast that everybody loves. Anyway, so what do you want to talk about? Because we have a lot of stuff to talk about. Do you want to just address the elephant in the room? You want to address the big Toblerone in the room?
I don't know if this podcast deserves that big Toblerone.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, both of us watched Neo Yokio. That sure was a thing that came out of nowhere. I first heard about it like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it had a really short promotion to release date.
Yeah, I saw it, and I saw, all right, this main character looks a lot like the dude from Static Shock, and oh my god, is that Jaden Smith and Jude?
Yeah.
What?
The cast is insane. So something that I didn't know about this show that Kat actually told me that she had done some research on is apparently this was a show that Ezra Koenig and Jaden Smith had pitched to Fox, that they had like made a certain amount of episodes to show to Fox because Fox was apparently interested in it, and Fox eventually said no, and Netflix picked it up.
I don't blame them.
Yeah, no, I don't. I do not see this show succeeding in any way on terrestrial television. I mean, I think Netflix maybe
is good for it.
Yeah, was the only possible venue that this could have succeeded in, and it is. I think it succeeded. I mean, people are Twitter is awash with it.
Mostly Toblerone jokes, but those
it's
count.
Like every take is a hot take on this one because like everybody loves it or hates it. I mean, there's really no in between.
Here's the thing,
except for probably us.
I thought, well, watching it at first through the first episode, I thought, oh, this is kind of a parody, and I'm actually quite enjoying it. But as it went further through, I'm just like, you know what? I'm not sure if this is a parody anymore.
Yeah.
Which I will say, towards the end of it, I was just like, that wasn't very good, and I kind of wish I hadn't seen all that. But almost every single one-liner had me fucking dying. I laughed really hard at that show.
Here's the thing. I don't think it's a parody of anime. I think it's a parody of something else, of a lot of different things. I just don't know what it is. I think it's a parody of celebrity life and in like bougie New York like teens, and you know that, like, you know, especially like being like the son of a celebrity or something like that.
All the one-liners that had to do with that shit were the ones that killed me the hardest too.
Yeah, I mean it's a funny show, but not in like a Rick and Morty way. Like in a I mean they're not thinkers because the jokes are all dumb as shit and weird and abstract.
Well, for me, half of the hilarity of it was hearing animated characters say things like, "Hey, fuck those fuckboys."
Yeah, or like, "I can see you, bitch." Like,
and just like the deadpan delivery that Jaden Smith had.
Yeah, I mean, good or bad, this show has had an impact that I have been very surprised by. I did not think people were going to like the show as much as they did. I didn't think I was going to like the show as much as I did, because most of the reviews I were reading were from people that this show was not meant for. And trust me, to this day, I don't really know who this show is for.
No idea.
It's just Jaden if you like it, you like it, and if you don't, you don't. I mean, like, it's clear, like, it's clearly... Honestly, it would be weird to think that it wasn't aimed at Twitter in some way, because like, I
think it has to be. Twitter, with how vapid Twitter is and how quickly everything changes.
Yeah, it was almost built to latch onto that, but I don't know if that was their original aim. Really, the biggest question for me about Neo Yokio is like, how much of the shit is intentional and how much of it is just like completely
I have no idea. Like I
unintentional.
said, the first episode, I was just like, oh, this is kind of a smart parody. They know what they're doing with the whole thing, with the, even calling the people that follow the Coco Chanel blogger like the Hellenists. Like, I thought that was hysterical.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of the second episode, I was just like, I'm not sure anymore. Although the fucking, was it Sailor Pellegrino from South Crack-a-Lacka?
So good. I have to say, most of that show I could probably take or leave. I really, really do like the kind of weird, almost like, I want to almost compare their approach to weird bougie New York life as very similar to the way that BoJack Horseman portrays like weird, like upper class LA life through a lot of different strata. It achieves the same sort of like feeling to me, even though like there's two very different shows. But also, like, the biggest saving grace for me in that show was what are their names? Lexi and Gottlieb.
Those guys were
Desus and Miro from they have their own late night show on Viceland, and they've been on like Waypoint stuff a couple times, playing games with them and stuff, and they are awesome. They're the only late night show hosted. First of all, I think they're the only like legit TV late night show that's hosted by black dudes at this point, and they are like very unapologetically black in the best way, and I think that really sets them apart, and they're the same way in this show. They're kind of just being Desus and Miro in this show, which is really awesome. But their names are fucking Lexi and Gottlieb, which is just like holy shit, like just those names are so good.
Fucking gender swapping the panda was really bad too.
Yeah, that whole episode.
Awful.
There is definitely one episode that I feel like they could have just left out, and that is
that was really bad.
There is a very problematic episode that is supposed to be like a very ham-fisted, like, we see you at Ranma 1/2.
Yeah.
But it did not do anything like Ranma 1/2.
The only good part of that episode was announcing that Charles the Robo Butler had a pilot.
Yeah.
Who was just like a short, like, sassy old lady
in a plug suit. A plug suit.
That was pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that this show doesn't really succeed as an anime. It just succeeds as its own thing. And I think the anime is just there to get people to watch it. Honestly, it's there to set it apart visually. And I will say, visually, like, there is something to that show. It does look like Static Shock. It is animated not even as well as that.
No, it looks really bad.
The character designs are not great, especially
they're pretty boring and borderline racist at times.
Yeah, but I will say that just the aesthetic of that show, specifically the title sequence, is just it's wonderful.
In the first few episodes, every time what's the fuckboy's name, Angelico or whatever.
Angelico,
yeah,
voiced
every
by
time
Jason Schwartzman.
Yeah, like every time he showed up, and it did like in the East Side Boys.
Yeah,
every time that popped up with the title card.
Yeah,
it was pretty damn funny.
That and the fact that every time he told a joke and his boys started laughing, it was the same sound clip, and it sounded like it was recorded on an iPhone.
They all had like different pastel colored shorts.
Yeah. I don't know. That show it's something.
So the moments in it really crack me up.
I do like it. Like I think at the end of the day I do enjoy I enjoyed my time with it, but not necessarily in the same way that I enjoy literally anything else. Like it was definitely partially a hate watch for me, but
definitely
not like here's the thing. That show is going to give people of color like a legit character to cosplay without like having to change any part of themselves, and that's really fucking cool. Like I am super super excited to see the Neo Yokio cosplay at conventions fun. And like that show has like, you know, unapologetic non-whiteness in it, and I think that's super fucking cool.
I wish they carried over to the soundtrack at all.
Yeah, that's the thing. That I think, you know, I the first review I ever read of the show was by Mike Toole, and I love the guy. He's the editor-in-chief of Anime News Network, and you know when he reviews something, they're bringing out the big guns. And he's a very skilled reviewer, but I am not surprised that he did not like the show at all, because the show is very much not for him at all. It's certainly not a show for older white men, and like I'm getting to be an older white man, but I'm like trying to stay up on things.
We're
and
hip.
I do really like this show for what it did, but the one thing that it was missing was music. Almost all the music was weird, like public domain, like classical music and like other ethnic music, although it did use a fucking Charles Mingus track at one point, which was super dope.
I think that was in the Shitty episode too.
Yeah, I mean it has its moments here or there where it'll bring out a licensed track and you're like, oh, this is like weird and obscure. But like for a show that does celebrate blackness in a way without really ever like, you know, calling attention to it, which is interesting. Yeah, there's no real good music in it. I mean, there's no hip hop. Like, I would have loved to see the show have some good like licensed tracks, and I feel like that might have been a conscious decision on Ezra Koenig's part, because I feel like Ezra Koenig is probably curating the soundtrack for the show, considering he's a fucking musician. Yeah. But yeah, that show is just super weird. It goes all over the place. I feel like they just like shotgunned it, and like whatever stuck, and everything else will just fall to the ground. I'd just be super interested in seeing what a second season looks like. That would be cool.
I don't even know if I go that far. I kind of like it where it is. I'm not sure if I could do any more of it.
I like it where, yeah, I mean, I could do more of it if it's different. Like I at the end of the day, I would like to see more of these characters and see how much stupider they could take it. And I wouldn't be surprised at it, but also I'm sure Netflix got this for a fucking bargain and are not willing to put money into it again. Cast. So yeah.
Before we move on from it, what was your like number one like favorite moment in the show?
Oh God. Here's the thing. I watched that show both hopped up on coffee and drunk. So it's a huge blur for me. But fuck. Probably, I don't know, probably anything to do with Sailor Pellegrino. Like, she's just so stupid.
Her voice
such
was
a dumb
awful.
character.
I think my like there was one line where I had to like pause it and like stop laughing.
I do, but go ahead.
All right, mine is when he's chasing the teacher and he goes to the club and he's like, "What are you doing here?" The teacher's like, "What am I doing here? My boyfriend plays Gregorian house here," and just everybody throws off their cloaks.
Yes.
It's just like, what the fuck?
And it is actual Gregorian house.
Yes.
My favorite,
I
it's really subtle and something that probably not everybody laughed at, but I love Deezus and Miro's or Lexi and Gottlieb's vernacular in this show because they go so far out of their way to throw as much fucking like black Twitter words in their language. And the part where they're playing field hockey and the like massive goalie gets put in goal,
God, I forgot about that.
Gottlieb just goes, "Yo, you see how diesel that goalie is?"
Yeah,
I fucking laughed my ass
shit.
off. Oh my god, I laughed so fucking hard at that.
That was the first
I was
episode,
like,
too.
when has someone said diesel like in that well, it's like someone saying
field
diesel
hockey.
in an anime while playing field hockey.
I do have to revisit though because I found a way to trick Netflix into giving me the Japanese dub.
Oh yeah.
So I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, you're gonna have to do some research and tell us exactly who's in that. I can't imagine that's anybody famous, but
No, probably not.
So, should we talk about? Ooh, I want to. Let's get this out of the way. I watched that Blade Runner thing.
Yeah, talk to me about it because I have not seen it.
So for anybody that doesn't know, it's a 15-minute anime short set a couple years, 3 years after the original Blade Runner movie, directed by the one and only Shinichiro Watanabe, director of Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, Kids on the Slope, a bunch of really good shows. Yeah, like Denis Villeneuve basically like handpicked him and said like, "Yo, I want you to do a Blade Runner short." He's been doing a couple of film shorts that have kind of been filling in the timeline between the original Blade Runner and this new Blade Runner movie that's coming out. And I believe Ridley Scott's son has directed the first two, and then Watanabe's is the third. It was an exclusive on Crunchyroll. It came out yesterday, and it is basically the Animatrix for Blade Runner.
All right.
It is directed... I mean, and if anybody knows anything about the Animatrix, you'll know that Shinichiro Watanabe was heavily involved in that as well. So I guess it shouldn't be too surprising that, another one of these like sort of like timeline filling in things is going to look like the Animatrix. But I was actually surprised at like how common the thread was. There's like an entire scene that's devoted to sort of after the events of the original Blade Runner, replicants start to fall out of favor and get like taken out in the streets by mobs. And
was that directly a result of the events of Blade Runner, or it just sort of happened naturally?
It's like, no, because the events of Blade Runner were intensely personal.
Yeah.
It wasn't
that's
really
why I was
obviously
curious if,
yeah.
like, somehow like Decker's story like,
and that's good. We're talking about a universe thing. I think it was explained in the anime. Honestly, it's a generic in-universe explanation of like, replicants start to do a bunch of bad shit and people start to get tired of it, so they start killing replicants in their sleep.
Right.
Yeah, much in the same way as the machine war in the original in the Animatrix. I mean, the scenes were very similarly done. So the animation was absolutely fantastic. Watanabe assembled kind of a like 15-man team under him that just. You could tell, I mean, all the cuts were very stylized. They very much had their own style. I mean, a lot of very well-known animators who I can't tell you off the top of my head. Honestly, I looked at the list, and a lot of them are well-recognized. They're nobody that we really talk about that much on this podcast, but they're all very solid animators. It was actually produced at Cygames, their like anime studio.
That's not too surprising. They just finished up on Bahamut. Yeah,
so that was cool. And the CGI and effects in the short were incredibly good. Music by Flying Lotus, which was crazy. He did such a good job kind of melding the original Blade Runner score with that sort of like Vangelis sound with, his very particular brand of music. It's in English, which I was surprised about. Didn't think it was going to be in English.
Is it decent cast, or they just like pulled random people?
They had 3 anime voice actors. One of whom was there's a black main character in the anime, and one of them was and he was voiced by an up and coming black voice actor, which I thought was pretty cool because you don't see that enough in today's anime industry. There was one girl that I recognized the name of, but that all pales into comparison to Edward James Olmos reprised his role as Gaff in the original movie in this, which was really cool to hear. So that was really awesome. It's a Watanabe Blade Runner project. It's exactly what you would expect. I just wish that it was longer. I wish it was like 30 minutes long, because they get to these really good moments that are very evocative of the original Blade Runner. Because like my favorite thing about the original Blade Runner is something that eventually ended up translating in a lot of the reasons why I like Oshi stuff is because it's not afraid to just linger on something. It's not afraid to get lucid and weird and just let the music play and let you seep into a scene as a viewer. And I could tell that it wanted to do that. It conveyed that feeling, but it just wasn't long enough to allow them to do that. But I will say the story is really cool. It basically, this is no no spoilers, because like this story has been kind of promoted by these shorts and just Denis Villeneuve talking about it in interviews. But there's this whole massive kind of almost apocalyptic event between the first Blade Runner and the second Blade Runner called the Blackout. And up until now, the only thing we ever knew about it was that an EMP set it off and basically like destroyed all the world's electronics and just fucked everything basically. And in this one, you find out how that happens at the hands of replicants who basically want to destroy the human world. Which should be a good start. Yeah, it's really cool, really well done. The animation is fantastic. The backgrounds specifically are like, I mean, when you think Watanabe Blade Runner anime, you think it's a visual feast. I mean, this is a visual fucking feast for the eyes. So go watch it. It's on Crunchyroll. You can watch it without a subscription for free because they're trying to promote the shit out of that movie. And as they should, because I hear that movie, early impressions are saying that it is Oscar worthy, which is a hell of a thing to say about a sequel. Like Blade Runner. Yeah, that's big news. So anyway, why don't we move into the news of the day? Because we have a couple stories.
Yeah, well, the biggest one is Kemono Friends. If you guys were listening while that was airing, I was a huge fan of it, and I spent a lot of time trying to explain why it was good and why it was a big deal and exactly how popular it got in Japan. Well, bad news. All of a sudden, I think 2 or 3 days ago, the director of the show tweeted, and he said, "I've been removed from the project." Normally, that sucks when you know there is a season 2 coming of anything, but Kemono Friends was made by a small studio of I think like 15 people. Yeah. And this director directed it, scripted it, modeled some of the characters, animated like the majority of it himself. And he got removed by Kadokawa. And as the day went on, this went completely viral in Japan, and we saw a reaction from Japanese fans like I've never seen before. Like people were petitioning. A lot of them were calling to boycott, and there was almost equally as a large outcry from other Japanese creators saying this is ridiculous. I can't believe Kadokawa has done this. The guy that wrote Girlish Number, Watari, said this is almost a verbatim quote. He said, "Wow, I can't believe something worse than I thought of in Girlish Number would happen in real life." Yeah. It was a big deal and a big loss. And then the rest of Studio Yorozu just walked out. So that studio more or less doesn't exist anymore, and Kadokawa is plowing forward. Yeah. And some developments have happened since the mass resignations. Apparently, either today or yesterday. Yeah, I haven't seen any news today yet. So. Apparently they trotted the voice actresses from the show out on basically like a live stream to apologize on their behalf, and that who is there, Kadokawa's behalf or
on Kadokawa's behalf. It
was my understanding that at least the main voice actresses were contracted under Yao Yorozu, not Kadokawa. I could be wrong.
I don't know how that worked, but all I know is that the main voice actresses awful. Came out on the stream today and were basically just like, sorry. And people, I don't know if there's confirmed proof that it was Kadokawa using their contracts to force them to do that or whatever, but
when the dust settled a bit, we found out why he got outed, because it was a giant surprise to everybody. And apparently he was very protective of the intellectual property and wanted to continue doing what he wanted to do, which I think is kind of fair when it's almost a one-man show. Yeah. He did pretty easily over 50% of the work on it. And he didn't want to do anything crazy.
Somewhat unusual in the anime industry to have any control over IP. Yeah.
But he did things like he released an episode 12.1, which was completely funded by him and solely animated by him. But he did use the voice actresses. He did that. Normally, that would be something that would be bundled on a Blu-ray as an OVA, and he just released it online for free. At Comiket, they released some concept work, and apparently Kadokawa hadn't signed explicit permission, even though they had said, yeah, you can keep on doing what you want as long as you make a season 2 for us. And then evidently, like, we'll never know exactly what happened just by the nature of the thing, but this really upset some executives at Kadokawa, who then ousted them.
Yeah, so it's tough. I mean, and it's beginning to spread over here. I mean,
it was a big deal on U.S. Twitter, too.
Yeah, well, I mean, U.S. Twitter, and also you rarely see, like, Japan, like, big industry news like this reach the reach, like, the top spot in even, like, places like our anime, which is notoriously pretty outside of discussing industry politics.
Yeah.
And even they are kind of...
Yeah, like, I'm looking at our anime right now, and, like, half the things are having to do with Kemono Friends.
Yeah. Well, the hashtag is no Tatsuki no Tanoshi. So
yeah, that's the English. Tatsuki, of course, being the director's name.
Yeah, it's a crazy situation, and its reaction is kind of unprecedented from what I've seen. It's really crazy to see Japanese fans reacting very much the same as you would think Western fans.
Yeah, that was the thing that was striking me the most as it came out. You know, obviously Japanese fans get upset at injustices like anybody else.
Yeah.
But there were like 6 different change.org petitions like about this, and I've never seen anything like that. It's very rare to see other creators in the industry speak out that quickly.
Yeah,
something.
totally.
It was it's been very interesting, and it really upsets me as a fan of Kemono Friends. Like, this was such a fun, pure thing, and then here's, like, you can't get a more stereotypical bad guy move than, hey, let's oust the director.
Well, I found out some pretty interesting things about Kadokawa today as a company that I did not know.
I know exactly which tweet you're talking about.
Yep, specifically that they used to be headed up by someone that is now in jail for cocaine smuggling. Which is kind of insane. I think that was their namesake too. I can't remember his first name, but his name was definitely Kadokawa.
Nice.
Probably the founder of the company. Definitely their CEO of the time. So yeah, I mean, they're not necessarily known as a 100% above board company in the first place. So I guess it's no surprise. But also, I honestly, man, I would not put this past any company in the anime industry.
It's pretty insane to see it like this.
Japanese
obvious,
corporate world is notoriously,
like, we all know how much bullshit goes on, but to see it this like plain of day is crazy.
It's a notoriously heartless environment. It's a notoriously joyless environment in a lot of cases, and it is notorious for like cutting off the foot to spite the leg. It's like, it's very motivated out of, like, greater concepts that are prevalent in Japanese corporate structure that go back hundreds of years, like stuff that is seems insane to us. I mean, I gave you guys the example the other day of, like, why I get so frustrated with Nintendo sometimes, because, like, they do this shit all the time. Like, they for every good thing that they do, they almost always do an equal and opposite bad thing that just like sets them back on their haunches, and it's completely inexplicable.
Crazy. I'm starting to wonder how much this is going to affect Kadokawa's bottom line, because a lot of people were talking about their market share in the Nikkei stock index, which is pretty much Japan's NYSE. It took a hit, but nothing crazy. It was like 1.5-2%. Normal day-to-day trading. But if this continues like this, and actual public outcry is this big, because this is now the third day in a row that Kadokawa has been trending on Japanese Twitter, and for the last 2 days, Kadokawa and Kemono Friends were trending worldwide. Yeah, it is not very common for a Japanese topic to trend worldwide, especially anime.
Yeah, so I mean, it's
a big thing. It's crazy.
It's a big deal. I mean, anybody that cares about anime and the anime industry should care about it, certainly, because it's a nasty precedent to set. And I'm really happy and heartened to see that the people in this industry that is notoriously gun shy about making statements are doing such a thing. I'm happy to see creators and talent alike speaking out, and I'm happy to see that everybody else at Yaoyorozu resigned. I mean, I'm not happy that they lost their jobs, and I'm not happy that they have this blemish on their on their records, but I am very happy to see that they are sticking up for their principles in a way that I thought, was primarily a Western way of doing things. So
it's quite the reaction, and it does make me happy to see that. And from a show that was initially everybody saying, "Oh wow, this is a piece of shit," and then
it's the ultimate Cinderella story. I mean, it's there, like, I would say that a large portion of why it has gotten so much press is the fact that nobody ever thought that the show was going to go anywhere. Nope. And yet it did against all odds, and that's a very good story. I only hope that in a way that would kind of defy the norms of the anime industry, I hope that another studio scoops them up and puts some money and time in their hands and gives them an opportunity to make something cool, because I certainly know that if this were happening in the United States, they would probably already be hired by someone else.
By Netflix. Netflix would pick them up.
I mean, shit. I mean, the only problem is that, like, why couldn't Netflix pick all these people up? I mean,
they Netflix could, but the chances of them striking gold again are very slim.
Well, totally, but I mean, they deserve another chance.
Oh, absolutely.
It would certainly make Netflix a lot of money simply based on the name recognition. Like, if they had a thing that was like from the creators of Kemono Friends on it,
somebody's going to
people would watch the
shit.
fuck out of that.
People are going to capitalize on this.
The only problem is that Netflix can't really do anything without a studio. So Netflix would essentially have to form a new studio with them at its core, which
just like
honestly,
reverse name Yao Yorosu.
I'm kind of waiting for that to happen at a certain point. Like, I feel like Netflix is so obsessed with its own, like, generating its own content that, like, the logical next step for them would be like, we kind of don't need to partner with anyone anymore because we have our own studio.
Yeah.
And so I honestly would not be surprised, but at the end of the day, I just hope these people get jobs, even if they don't get to work again with each other. I mean, they don't deserve to have had this happen to them and then not work in the industry again, because that would just be awful. And undeserved. Totally.
All right. Well, in brighter, different industry news, and this is going back a couple weeks now, we put out somewhat recently a video on Macross and why it hasn't shown up in the States in 20 odd some years. Well, soon.
Somewhat good news.
And by soon, I mean March 14th, 2021. What's their face? I already forgot their name because I don't need to worry
Harmony
about them anymore.
Gold.
There we go. Harmony Gold's copyright will be officially up. They were litigated against by Tatsunoko recently.
Oh, actually, the opposite.
Yeah, the opposite.
Harmony Gold took them into litigation
and lost.
Predictably. I mean,
it's about goddamn time.
I think we even said in the video that it would. You said in the video that it would take someone doing this exact thing for the rights to Macross being taken away from Harmony Gold, which they never had a legal basis to have in the first place, outside of the home video release rights.
Due to the nature of my regular day job, I work in a law office. Obviously, I don't practice law, but I work in a law office. I had access to a Pacer account, which is what you use to download and read legal briefs and stuff like that. And I bought access to the files, all that I could for this, and read through them. Obviously, I'm not an expert in legalese, but it was an interesting case, and we discovered a lot about the proceedings between Harmony Gold and the Japanese right owners that we didn't know. Mainly that there had been contact like all through the 2000s, and to some extent, Harmony Gold had been asked to actually protect the copyright. They went way overboard. Obviously, this is not what they wanted, and most of the litigation was actually about, well, this is what they meant, and bad faith, yada yada yada. And the judge more or less said, all right, well, you guys keep up doing what you're doing. Obviously, you have all of Robotech until this time, or you have all of Robotech forever, but you can't try to own Macross internationally past this date.
Yeah. So look in March of 2021. Hopefully. Yeah.
I will be throwing a party.
Hopefully the big players in home video licensing in the United States will begin to move very quickly to acquire those home video rights because I would really like to see.
I'm gonna buy all of them.
Delta and Frontier and Plus and all these different series actually get. I mean, even the older shit, I would love to see get re-released on Blu-ray. You know. Look, SDF
two actually got released
Plus
here.
Frontier, Delta,
great.
fucking all of it. Get it all over here because there's no reason it shouldn't be over here. So
that is so exciting for me. I'm such a big
very
fan
good
of the
news,
series. And that'll be a load off my shoulders.
Yeah. So I guess the one other main news story, and I'm glad that you interspersed this with something good because this is, I mean. It depends on how you could view this story, but it recently came out that One Punch Man, the second season, which has been announced for some time, is going to be animated this time around by JC Staff, with Shingo Natsume not being involved anymore. Now, of course, Shingo Natsume was the director of the first season. Madhouse was the studio from the first season, although there were so many Bones animators on that project, it might as well have just been a cross studio effort. But yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of people are taking this badly. I would say.
That's my first reaction too, honestly. But at the same time, there's nothing stopping JC Staff from attracting incredibly talented people. You know, especially now that the precedent had been set by the first season. Yeah, I would be kind of surprised if they didn't.
It is most certainly necessary to create a open environment for animators from other studios to come in, especially since JC Staff, much more so than Madhouse, is not very well known for its stellar and stylized animation.
Well known for adapting visual novels and light novels.
Cranking out stuff. And a lot of the stuff that they make is good, and that's fine. I like a lot of JC Staff shows. But also most of the stuff that they make is not necessarily known for its animation.
It's just pretty mediocre.
Yeah. So, and obviously Shingo Natsume not being involved is a pretty big hit. Although, if I were to think about it, I don't know if I would necessarily say that direction was like a standout factor of One Punch Man season 1.
It was all animation nuts, let's be real.
Now, I mean, that's the thing, is that how much of that environment was Shingo Natsume's doing? That's the
we'll probably never know.
Yeah, that's the thing that concerns me. So we've got I don't know the name of the director. I'm not going to look it up because it's not important. But what you need to know is that he is a first-timer in the director's seat, and JC Staff does not necessarily have a great track record for stunningly animated shows, and I think that's what's worrying a lot of people. Hopefully, I don't know what type of working relationship JC Staff has with studios like Madhouse and Bones. I hope a good one.
They've been around forever. I think it's more about attracting animators to the project than anything, which shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. So yeah, I don't know when that is happening. Is that winter or summer maybe next year?
I think it's winter.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
So, all right. Well, yeah, I mean, that's just something to keep your eye on if you liked One Punch Man. Honestly, the further I get from that show, the less strongly I feel about it.
I blame
especially,
Mob for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, Mob Psycho killed about any excitement I had for One Punch Man after I saw that show because it is...
At the same time...
I certainly like One Punch Man, and I think it's fun, but...
At the same time, I think One Punch Man did more for anime in the States than anything in a long time had.
Basically, since Attack on Titan.
Since Attack on Titan, easily. That was very popular with people in all walks of life, and I hope that we can do that again. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's certainly going to enjoy some pretty widespread popularity for a long time. So, yeah, I think it'll be something to look forward to, but also something to keep your eye on because, yeah. So, hey, before we jump into talking about some of this season's shows, I will update you guys. We are working on a season preview for next season, fall?
Yeah,
fall 2017. It's going to be chock full of content, but less so than other years. Because we've been really busy and we ran out of time in AWAs this weekend, but also... I think we're going to try out taking a more curated approach. I feel like a lot of the times when we make these season previews, we end up talking about shows that nobody that we know or listens to or watches our content really cares or talks about.
It's kind of a crapshoot.
I feel like we would probably be better suited at just being like, here's the stuff that we're excited about, and like we can point you to resources to doing further research if that's something that you want. But I feel like, I don't want to speak for the viewers or the listeners, but I feel like most people come to us for like, what we're watching, what we're talking about. So obviously, in the weeks and months following, keep an eye on our content and Twitter and everything, because I'm sure there's going to be something that we missed in the preview. But we each have like 6 or 7 shows each that we're talking about. But next season is looking real big on sequels and real small on everything else.
Real big on like good sequels.
Yeah. There's a couple of interesting things smattered here and there that I would suggest you go check out when we it'll be at the time of uploading this, it'll be some point next week that we have this thing up, and we'll also of course have a hot takes episode that we do at some point next week and package with that on our website. So onoanime.moe is the website. I'll say it again at the end of this, and it'll be in the description of this video, but that's the place you need to go to find basically everything that we do. So that being said, let's talk about stuff that is happening now. So the season is ending this week, so it might be a little premature to talk about it because we are recording another episode that will be like a few days. It's a season wrap-up episode, but as of right now, I'm only watching one show that is actually ended, or I've only seen one show that's actually ended. I know New Game probably ended yesterday. But I am only still watching. I will say that I'm only still watching one show that has ended. And you know what? Fuck it. Let's talk about it. That show is Recreators.
That did end a couple weeks ago.
I wrote a lot about this on Twitter when it ended because I feel like it doesn't get talked about really ever.
Yeah, people fell off of that. It was really popular for a few weeks, and then
I don't know. I feel like it never really was popular in the States. It has enjoyed some pretty good popularity in Japan, some consistent popularity. It is like destroying the new type rankings right now, so that's a pretty good indicator of at least some moderate popularity. But yeah, I don't know. So it was a 2-core show. For anybody that doesn't really know what it is, it was basically another one of these shows that pits anime tropes against each other in sort of like a battle royale scenario, and I think its biggest strength was that it focused really on the anime tropes of the here and now, which was really interesting to see because, when you see these shows, like my biggest example is I bring up Concrete Revolution because I know that is not what that show ended up being in the end, but that is what it definitely started out as. And it included a lot of tropes that aren't really, most of which were not really applicable to like what anime is like today, and I feel like that kind of
too many kaiju. Yeah,
I mean, like kaiju and what is it called, like Sentai, like knockoffs and shit like that, and like their idea of a magical girl was like very 1980s, 1990s,
creamy mommy as hell.
Yeah, so. This show, it had a brazen female knight character that was very clearly supposed to be Saber, and it had magical slayer Mamika, who was very clearly supposed to be Madoka, and it had its tropes, but its tropes were like dead on, and they were modern and like current, and like even like the design aesthetic of these characters, you can tell like the main villain was like a shitty doujin villain that someone like posted on Nico Video, and which is like the most poetic thing in the world, first of all, but second of all, I mean, their design aesthetic was like very much something you would see like, here's my original character on Pixiv, like, it was good like that. But then you had this extra layer of the creators on top of it, the people in our world that were not tropes, that were just like regular ass people, that I thought was like a really interesting.
The Arrogate creator was totally a trope.
Oh yeah, no, but
except for that guy,
he needed to be. There's they can't show an Arrogate creator being a good person. He needed to be a piece of shit. No, but yeah, it was it didn't get watched enough here. It didn't get talked about here. And like, it was one of those shows where like, I cannot possibly argue with anybody that doesn't think it's good, because like, I completely understand. Like most people, it landed really mediocrely for me, but for them. But
for me watching it, it was like, I understand that they're playing into tropes, but I thought that they did that so well, it kind of bulldozed the idea that playing into tropes is a bad thing.
Yeah.
They like succeeded in kind of like overflow.
Their meta narrative in that show, and just how many aspects of like the anime industry and like making anime, and like what it is like to write and direct and to animate and all these different things, coupled with like actually having the tropes that you're talking about in the room with you while it's happening, was incredible. And like, you know, this is one of the things I said on Twitter, but like, they had so many opportunities to break the fourth wall in that show and speak directly to us, because that was essentially the only thing that was missing in that show, because you literally had a meta narrative of they were putting on my favorite thing about this entire thing, and obviously the spoilers, I mean, come on guys, we know there's going to be spoilers at this point, but the entire last arc of that show revolved around basically like a giant anime event. That was like a massive crossover event, only what the audience didn't know is that the massive crossover event was actually real, and what they were showing them was like a live feed of like
an alternate dimension.
Yeah, an alternate dimension.
The bird cage.
Yeah, the bird cage. And like the events were playing out in real time, and they basically had no control over them. And just what happened ended up just being a good story, because like that's the nature of that entire show. A good story must happen.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like hilarious, just in the sense of like they're literally using anime to talk about anime. Like it's like there's such a multi-layered
the only actual
burrito.
Fourth wall breaks happen from Meteora, I feel. Although there were a couple of points in that show where Altair, the main villain, literally looked at the camera, because Altair, the villain, knowing that she was in this birdcage, knew the event that was going on.
There was an exact moment in that show where I finally was like, oh, those motherfuckers did it. They're completely breaking the fourth wall, because she literally looks into camera and says like, "Dear viewers," or something like that.
That's exactly what it was.
But then it pans out, and you realize that she's talking to the crowd in the show.
Totally talking to us.
But yeah, it's the line between yourself in the real world and quote unquote these people in the anime real world is so thin that it might as well not even exist. So I thought that was really cool. Honestly, the biggest plus for me in this show was the characters. Like, I don't think there was a single...
the characters were very, very well realized. As like I said, they fulfilled their tropes, but one of the things, and they actually like literally talk about this in the show, is how they're brought out of their two-dimensional world into our ostensibly three-dimensional, even though it was still in the show, world, and that forces them to change because they have so much more input. One of the things that a character says, you know, as she's dying, she's talking to the creator and saying, "Hey, give us more stories and coffee in my story."
Yeah. And also like the true tragedy, realizing that like every as soon as the characters came through this portal into our world, they ceased to be the one that we know, which, like you said, it forced them to change. And every time one died, that was basically the complete end of their existence, and their other selves in the story would continue to live on, which is why I was so like devastated and happy at the end when they teased that Mamika and Alisteria had like a crossover. Which, because their relationship was my absolute favorite part about that show, really and I really wish it could have gone on longer, but I completely understand like why.
Yeah, Mamika dying was the Kamina moment of that show.
Yeah,
because she was the one that showed the most growth in the beginning, because she was a magical girl, you know, she's used to like attacking people with hearts, and then she attacks somebody literally, I think in like the first episode she's there and like sees them bleeding and actually hurt, and like that was the trigger for her to immediately start changing. She was the one that I felt went through the biggest change the quickest, and it kind of dominoed through the other characters.
Well, she was the first person to realize that Altair was the villain and that she was on the wrong side. But honestly, the coolest character in that entire show turned out to be Magane, because she
was good.
Is literally the entire reason that anything worked out for the good guys in that show, because, you know, they present her as this chaotic, evil figure. I mean, she's she's a murderer. She's not someone that you're meant to.
You're not supposed to like her at all.
Her introductory scene is literally her killing an innocent shop owner with like a weird demon creature. And she spends the entire show like messing with both sides, trying to get them to collude with one another. And I think the one thing that eventually breaks them is her, weirdly enough, her conversations with the quote main character, even though like he's,
I want to get to that after this.
Yeah.
Finish your point and then we can talk about that.
The one thing that eventually breaks her is I think her intrigue and eventual like kind of begrudging, almost like whimsical affection for Soda. Like she very clearly has a thing for him in a way, not necessarily in like a romantic way, but in just like she's curious and she's fascinated by him. And also I feel like she's drawn to like the fact that he basically was a contributor to his friend's suicide and he's tortured by that. But I also feel like she sees a redemption in him that she herself is incapable of achieving, and so decides to eventually just be like I wanted like she says I want to do this. She eventually gives Soda the ability to, she gives him her ability for a one-time use of basically making the impossible possible. Like that's her entire thing. She, if you tell, her whole thing is if you tell a lie about a lie, then it becomes truth. And that's how she is able to like trick people into giving her thing. She does it to the one like weird video game character or the manga character or whatever, that the guy from like the very clear Persona or JoJo type of like knockoff that has like a literally like a stand. She tricks him into giving her the stand at some point. And you see this over and over again, and then eventually she's just like, I just want to see the look on Altair's face. It's all going to be worth it if I manage to do it. And yeah, she eventually is just like, she allies with them because she likes Soda.
I thought she was chaotic evil and turned out she was chaotic neutral.
Which is the most interesting thing about her to me, is that like by the end of that show, she's still around. Like she's just off in that world. Her last scene takes place in an airport, which makes it very clear that she's going somewhere. So her and Meteora are still around, but also
she's why Trump won.
No, because it's also made very clear that any like sort of like special abilities or anything are basically a cut off eventually. So she would just be a normal psychotic
cool
girl.
Good for
but
her.
yeah, no, I thought she was the true wild card in that show, in a very perfect way, and ended up like just completely surprising me because of course. That was kind of the nature of that show, is that it attempted to surprise the viewer in a lot of different terms, and that was the one that surprised me the most, because I would just like, I had to rewind. I was just like, wait, what? She's good? That's the ultimate surprise, because they set her up as this villain, and then she tells a lie about a lie and makes it truth and flips the script.
They were doomed.
I mean, it's just another great example of this like really cool meta narrative, this game that they're playing with the audience of just like literally being like, this character is going to do a thing that is going to surprise other characters in the show, but it's also going to completely take you by surprise, because you are like the fourth character or whatever in the show. Like the audience is another character in the show. So it was cool to see that.
You started to speak about Soda as the main character, and I think what turned a lot of people off on the show was imagining him as the main character. He's presented classically in that way, but it becomes pretty obvious that he's not. If anybody, Silesia or Meteora were the main character, and he was very firmly a narrator, except for maybe the last episode. Yeah.
He definitely played an important part in that show in the end, but
he was there for you to experience the story through. He was not the focus of the show by any stretch of the imagination.
No, and I feel like his role in that show greatly improved, probably right past the point where people probably would have stopped watching it.
Absolutely.
And I don't blame them for that. But that show doesn't have a main character. It has a narrator, and then it has an ensemble cast. And because every character in that show gets their moment, they get equal importance in the narrative.
They were very good about that too.
Yeah, well, and the coolest part about the entire thing was, they eventually every single person came to realize the truth of what was happening. There wasn't a single person that died because they refused or didn't believe what they were told about Altair. Like, even Mamika, like, even though she died super early compared to everyone else, she knew.
She realized
she died knowing. And everybody knew by the end, which I thought was a really interesting way to kind of turn everything around on this villain that, like, literally has the power to change stories. Like, her power in her lore is that she can change circumstances, which translates to, like, I'm gonna rewrite everybody's stories.
Translates to I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah, basically. Which is, like, the coolest part about, like, this, like, supposedly perfect plan of putting her in the birdcage, when they actually realize, like, oh shit, we've actually just given her a world with no rules that she can do anything in. Like,
yeah,
that's the biggest
that was a
problem.
bit of a goof. Whoops.
Yeah, they were like, oh, we've actually made her way more powerful. But, you know,
yeah, that was an enjoyable show. You know, it's a fun romp from beginning to end. The
really
pacing
liked it.
was very well done. Like, every character is at least a little bit likable.
Yeah. Soundtrack was great. Definitely.
Yeah, obviously that had some real Sawano drops in it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's another Sawano soundtrack. It's good. It's good for an action anime, and I also firmly believe that show would not have been a show that I liked without that soundtrack.
It did play a very big part in it.
I don't think it would have worked. But also, yeah, I'm gonna miss those characters. I like spending time with them.
I'm gonna miss them doing something completely retarded and me being like, "Fuck yes, anime."
Yeah,
it was a very anime show.
Yeah, it was a very anime show, but, like, none of them acted like anime characters, which was the coolest.
They were
part.
a little too well rounded.
Like, I'd say probably the only character that didn't act like didn't become more toned down as the show got further on is Alistaria, but I think that's her entire character, is that she is
too stubborn
to a fault. Yeah, very stubborn, very idealistic, very holding on to our ideals. So let me talk about what I've dropped, because I got like 3 weeks behind on shit and I had to make some decisions. Thanks, Destiny 2. Thank you for coming out right at the point where I was already like 2 weeks behind on anime. You fucking asshole game. Love and Lies I dropped, which is crazy.
Good job. The ending was awful.
Yeah, crazy to say, but I really sat down and thought about it, and I was like, yep, ever since probably 3 or 4 episodes from, like, where I stopped watching, I was just like, man, yeah, this show is actually, like, kind of boring. The horniness is gone. The, like, all the parts that I like about it have kind of, like, fizzled out.
Everything that was going for it in the beginning, they, like, completely forgot or wrote out.
Yeah. Boy, am I glad I did not make a video about that show. Holy shit. It's like the biggest dodge bullet in my entire history. But yeah, so that one's gone. I'm sad that I'm sad to report that I had to drop My First Girlfriend is a Gal. But given how Funimation has chose to dub that show, I am pretty glad that I don't have my stamp on it anymore. Let's just say that the word SJW was said at least more than once during that show. Yeah.
All right.
Also, a lot of, like, alt-right slang has been used in that show. I think, like, not in a, like, pro alt-right way, like, I'm making fun of it, because, like, all of his friends are definitely, like, the type of people that would be on the alt-right, but I definitely have seen SJW and cuck used in that show, like, more than once.
That show was never
even
good,
in the subs. I enjoyed it for it being just the trashiest trash on earth and being about Gyaru, which I always love.
And I'm going to remind you of this, like, every season after this.
You should, because it's bad. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I'm proud, but, you know, fuck it. Sad to say, I also dropped Token Ranbu because that show started dragging some serious ass.
For me, it dragged from episode 2.
Even for me,
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, it was, again, you know, same thing with Tales of Zestiria. It was, like, stunningly well produced and very well voice acted, but, like, it's just like, I think Miles from Crunchyroll said the best critique you could possibly have about that show is that it really suffers for not having, like, actual villains. It's just them fighting monsters the entire time, and that's, like, it gets super boring after a couple episodes, and I would have to agree with them, unfortunately, because I really did like that show, and I liked it more than the other Token Ranbu anime. Let's just leave it at that. And there's one other one that I dropped. Shit. I don't know.
I did the opposite of you and went back and picked up like half the things I dropped because I had a bunch of time after Hurricane Irma knocked my life out.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do a lot of things, so it was a lot of staying super late at work to enjoy their air conditioning. So I was able to watch a surprising amount. Knights and Magic was like it's so funny going back and reading. And I'm only talking about things that have finished now. Going back and reading the season preview that I worked
Princess
on.
Principal was the other one that I dropped.
I'm still liking that. But it's really funny to go back into my preview and read because two of the shows that I completely like wrote off as haha wound up being my favorites. Knights Magic being one of them. This is far from a perfect show, but it had a similar love for what it was talking about as like Gundam Build Fighters, and it was absolutely contagious, and it made it a complete joy to watch. It was another isekai show about a kid who winds up in a universe where mechs exist, and all he wants to do is learn about them and build his own, and he winds up like it becoming the top of a knight order and like helping a country regain its independence after being invaded just so he can learn more about mechs. It was infectious. It was a lot of fun. And Orange did the mech battle, which was really great. The fights in that reminded me a lot actually of Comet Lucifer, which was not a good show, but the action was fantastic. The action was really good.
The CGI in that show was very good.
Yeah, and the CGI in this one was every bit as good, if not better. They're looking really good, and I'm excited to see what they do next season.
Cool.
Stay tuned to our preview. And then you mentioned Princess Principal.
Yeah.
I'm still really enjoying that one. The plot is ridiculous. I'm not caring about it nearly as much, which is a shame because the beginning it was so cool. But it's really the strength of the characters that's leading it through. They're all like really, really fun. Chisei especially, which is funny because if it wasn't made by a Japanese company, she would be racist as hell. And in fact, like still is. She is such a horrible Japanese stereotype, but she's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. I don't know. It would have been a show that it was the hardest one for me to try. I just, I had to make time decisions because it literally took me 2 days like of near continuous watching to catch up this weekend just on the ones that I ended up catching up on. I don't know. I have noticed that the production side of things on that show has started to slip very far. I shouldn't be surprised.
They had like a couple scenes every episode that still look amazing, but like as far as like general baseline,
it's 3 hertz, and I know I shouldn't be surprised that production starts to slip after like the 6th episode.
Interesting.
But
3 hertz was the main name, but Actus did like almost all the heavy lifting.
Again, Actus
has that problem obviously with Girls and Panzer.
Yeah, well, with any show that I've ever seen, it's the same thing. So. Think about, what was it, Long Riders. Remember that fucking show that, I don't even know if it ever finished airing? So, yeah, I did like the characters and I liked the world in that show a lot, but just the pacing started dragging ass for me, and the whole, weird time skips and episodic, and the fact that they, told one episode in the future and then would go back and for 4 episodes straight tell everybody's backstories was just man, y'all need to manage this time a lot better.
It was weird how they would come in and they would say case file 17 or something. And you just kind of had to keep a mental note of when that was in the timeline. Yeah,
they didn't really do a good job of allowing you as a viewer to kind of they didn't really string you along. You kind of had to just be 100% attentive all the time, and that's just not really how I watch stuff usually. So yeah, I was bummed that I had to drop that, but I didn't see myself enjoying catching up on it. So, but
I enjoyed it. A long running one that ended Soccer Quest. I remember we were in LA and I think we were in a car coming back from the airport or something. You're like, is it just me or is this show kind of boring? I was just it's. I assume you dropped it.
I did. I dropped it before the season. Yeah, I didn't make it through the first core.
It was definitely boring, but at the same time, something about the boringness made it that much more heartwarming because they are out in the boonies, and that's part of it is fighting the boredom of being out there and making people want to come to their city. And it wound up being a seriously heartwarming show that ended on a super positive note, and I really, really liked the characters by the end of it.
I think that show failed to do for me what a show like March Comes In Like a Lion did, because those shows are paced very similarly. They're about as boring as one another, but I don't know. I just think that the nature of a Shaft show carries it a little bit more.
There's a lot more
than
visual interest.
There's more visual interest, but also, yeah, it's just like the way that they direct stuff to me has it undoubtedly has a lot more just general impact than PA Works, because PA Works is very like...
They're grounded. They're very grounded,
yeah. I like their stuff, and I didn't hate Sakura Quest, but it's just like I can only watch so many anime a season, and like if I'm truly not captivated by something, then there's not really much I can do.
Going back to talking about PA Works and works like this, obviously this was the third one in their Working Girls series. The other ones were Hanasaku Iroha and of course Shirobako, which is on my like top 5. And this one felt similar to Shirobako in a lot of ways, but where it failed, if I'm going to use that word, compared to Shirobako had that goal at the end that was obvious, which is completing the anime on time.
Yeah.
And that kept the pacing like really tight, and there were clear things that they had to do each episode. This show, Sakura Quest, was more episodic and, all right, which way are we going to try to revitalize the town today? And of course there was, a big festival at the end that they were working towards, but that came in way too late. And even working into the festival, they announced it in like episode 17 or 18 that they were going to do it.
Yeah.
And like half of the episodes towards the end in 25, they got off that route to do something else.
Yeah, it was strange. For me, the pacing in the first probably half of the first core didn't really give too many reasons to be interested in it, besides like, cute older women doing cute older women things and like doing basically just like doing their job. And I was just like,
that's the Working Girl series.
That's cool. But they definitely had just like a more abstract goal. And also like the first like 6 or 7 episodes were just like failure after failure after failure after failure.
That doesn't stop.
like it's just like defeating.
Yeah,
I don't know.
They lose a lot.
Honestly, also like the characters didn't really do a whole lot for me either, especially the main character.
They took a long time to develop them. Like most of them didn't get into the meat of their issues and why they were doing what they were doing until the end, really. I
like their designs and their personalities were all right, but yeah, they didn't really, like I said, like they just didn't really give me a whole lot of reason to stick around for someone like me. And like I don't know, I also know that like full well that like I'm sure if this show had hit me at like a different point, I probably would like be extolling its virtues, but I don't know, just like where I was at that point, like it just wasn't for me.
One thing the show did great was, I mentioned this in a previous episode where I talked about how I can't remember the particular word for this, but they talked about the innkeeping laws and how bed and breakfasts are. They continue to do interesting things like that, where they talked about very active social issues in Japan through the show, which I haven't seen anything else ever comment on. There was that one. They had to deal with closing the shopping district just because sort of like in the US, like Walmart eats up local stores. And they were talking about how that there's a bigger grocery store and nobody has a reason to go to the pharmacy down the street when the other one is going to be near side and stuff like that. And of course they have to talk about the declining birth rates and all the younger kids not wanting to stay in the town. Everybody
there was a lot of
city.
Like millennial examination,
and I haven't seen that from anything else out of anime. So that was cool to get some real relevant social commentary.
That was the one thing that I would give that show over everything else, is that even in the episodes that I saw, they definitely did like even the first episode especially just gives you a very good idea of like what like millennials are not that different from like us in Japan. Like it's the same sort of thing that they have to deal with. So I saw a lot of people saying they like that finale, and
the finale was really sweet.
I'm glad that people like that show. I don't really have anything else that I feel super strongly about talking about unless I see it on your list.
Did you finish Isekai Shokudo, Restaurant in Another World?
No, that was another one that I dropped even before.
Early,
yeah, I thought that was pretty...
Did you finish New Game?
Interesting.
The last episode was yesterday.
I did not watch the one yesterday, but
we'll wait until we're...
Definitely. I'm definitely up on that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I want to talk about Gamers real quick then, since I gave Knights of Magic my little thing and Gamers is over. That was the other one on my
one other show I want to talk
yeah.
about, but we can end with that if you want.
Gamers was another one where I completely wrote it off because, oh, look, a show about a video game club in a high school. Who gives a fuck? But it was definitely not about that. It was about kids kind of finding their way around each other and how not telling each other what you're really thinking is really harmful to your relationships, but in a hilarious way. The show was built around misunderstandings. You know, you see one person act this way around somebody else. This must mean that, when it really means the complete opposite.
Am I crazy for thinking that I keep getting that show and Suridure Children confused?
I mean, they were very different.
Were they very different visually? Because
yeah.
Okay,
oh, yeah.
All right.
Suridure Children was great for similar reasons, but that was a short, first of all.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think a lot of people on my Twitter were watching Gamers, and again,
Gamers was really good. It was like Knights and Magic, one that was kind of addicting in its mood. It was far from my favorite of the season, but it was one of the ones where I made sure to watch it the same day it came out because I really wanted to know what would happen next, and that's important in a show.
Seems like a lot of people here liked it. A surprising amount.
It was a lot of fun. It was also really smart about its references. You know, you see so many like reference anime or something where they'll reference something that was popular and haha, that was it. They referenced it. It was funny, but this because everybody to some extent in the show is a fan of video games. You have, one that's into like FPSs. In fact, they in the opening and they actually talk about PlayerUnknown's Battleground, which is kind of crazy to think.
Yeah, I did see a clip from that show where they were talking about like the differences between like what games people in the US play and what people in Japan play.
It was really, really, really smart about that stuff. And they had people arguing about like what it means to be a gamer and stuff like that, and actually like talking about what their show is ostensibly about, which of course was just the backdrop for the relationships and the misunderstandings. But there's something about the tempo of the show and the humor of the show that was really, really charming, and I'm glad I gave it a shot.
Cool. I only want to talk about one other show, and it's one other show that is not available legally right now, but I still want to talk about.
I am so far behind.
Kakegurui, otherwise known as Kakegurui, because that's the only name that it has right now, and I'm pretty sure that's what Netflix is going to call it. It roughly translates to gambling addict, which I've talked about before, but that show is probably going to be my Kuromukuro. I think that show is going to be my anime of the season pretty handily. I feel very strongly about that show. Please, 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 in the coming months when Netflix finally gets off their ass and puts it up on the feed, please go watch it. Please give it numbers, because it is a very important show in one particular way, and I've discussed this with a number of queer folk that I know on Twitter. That show is gay as hell in a way that anime not usually is. It has a very keen eye. Oh, that's my phone ringing.
It's
That's old Pappy Schultz calling me. Sorry, guys. It has a very keen eye for like bondage imagery and like stuff that is evocative of sort of the S&M.
Kind of sexually smart.
It is very sexually aware of it is a, let's just say this, it has a very different type of woman on woman sexuality that is not very common in anime, and it also has a very keen eye for like the depraved sexuality of the sort of like fetish community. Like there's literally a character who like gets off on playing Russian roulette, and by gets off I mean literally gets off on like putting a gun to her head and pulling the trigger, which should give you an idea of how weird and messed up this show and its characters are. But the thing I will say is that we are finally getting to the point where all of it will pay off, and that is Saori Hayami's character is now sitting across the table from Miyuki Sawashiro's character, and I have yet to see the final episode, so I don't know what's going to happen, but all I know is those two characters' relationships are amazing. Those two characters' relationship is amazing. They are very clearly the yin and yang of that show. They both carry the same sort of like weird pseudo-sexual desire for the ultimate risk that Sarihami's character has like demonstrated over and over and over again, which is why she's gotten this far. So basically, like, Sarihami's finally getting to the point where she's meeting someone of her caliber, and not only of her caliber, like someone that has almost the exact same motivations as her, just manifested in a much darker way because she's using it to basically control people's lives. So that show, please.
I am excited to catch up on that. That's gonna be the one thing that I make sure I catch up on in the lull before the next.
It is also very heartening to see because it is a manga adaptation, which you don't see very many manga like this getting adapted nowadays, by MAPPA, and MAPPA has Yuri on Ice notwithstanding had kind of a rough track record lately, so I'm really glad to see with them coming out with
Sakuga put out a really, really good article on why they've been taking on so many projects lately.
Yeah,
I'll read that.
But Kakegurui is it's another show that Sayo Yamamoto has been at least tangentially involved in. She directed the opening and storyboarded it, and it is very much that type of show. If you are like me and you are interested in alternative representations of sexuality in anime, much like Yuri on Ice, then Kakegurui is definitely a show for you. Also, if you like Prison School, the show is like number 2 on that list of like just real weird shit.
But it's a cross between Yuri on Ice and Prison School.
No, not even close. It's got some Prison School in it, but it is very much its own thing. Just visually, it's very similar to Prison School in a lot of ways. A lot of the weird sort of like still frame SpongeBob shots are very much evocative of Prison School. But the character design is flawless. The animation so far has been very good. The voice acting is among some of the best performances I've ever heard out of pretty much everybody in this entire show. Sarihami needs to be winning a goddamn award for her performance in this show because it is fucking believable to me. So yeah, when it comes out on Netflix within the next coming months, please go watch it because it is more than worth it. And Netflix will not do a good job promoting it, and nobody will be talking about it. So please go watch the thing. So is there anything else you want to talk about before we sign off?
Nah, I think that should do it. See you guys at AWA.
All right, yeah. So, I guess we should say we'll be at Anime Week in Atlanta this weekend. So
we aren't actually doing anything there. We
are press,
we're there. We aren't doing any panels.
We're there as just a couple of stinky weebs like the rest of you. So, if you're going to be there, hit us up on Twitter. We'll be there.
Yeah, give us a shout.
onoanime.moe, that's the place to get it all. YouTube.com/onoanime, Twitter.com/onoanime, Facebook.com/onoanime.
onoanime@gmail.com.
Onoanime official on Instagram. I feel like we have another new link. Oh, shit. Well, we completely glossed over probably a very important thing.
Yeah, right.
So I'm just going to let this play out under us. We started a like kind of side podcast, and obviously if you're listening to this in the podcast feed, you already know about it. It's called Ono Anime Radio. You can go to soundcloud.com/Ono Radio or just find the first episode in the podcast feed. It's kind of a DJ mix podcast that we're starting. I did the first episode that we have is an episode 0 that I did myself to kind of like ease you in. And in the words of, oh God, who was it that had that national anthem comment that I laughed so fucking hard at on Twitter? What is his name? He's a rapper, and his name is... God damn it. But this mix slaps. This mix slaps hard. So it gets ethnic in a way that anime mixes probably shouldn't, but it's good, and I'm very proud of it. So go to the podcast feed or soundcloud.com/Ono Anime Radio, or you can just search Ono Anime Radio on SoundCloud. Follow us, like it, repost it, do all that good shit, and we will be back at you next month with the official episode 1 that we will do a much better job of promoting than this time. But until then, go to all those links that are in the description below and do all the fancy shit that you like to do. And until then, we will see you next time.